Welcome to Michael Potts F1, everything Formula 1, but from a photographer's point of view. Round 18, the Singapore Grand Prix. Some commentators have suggested that he's just not yet driving like a world champion. In Singapore, he silenced his critics. It was a nearly perfect drive for the Glastonbury man. He took his 6th pole position and delivered the perfect win. This was the first time he's led a race after the first lap after starting on pole position. And while that does sound perfect, he came so close to throwing it away by brushing the wall on laps 30 and laps 45. Somehow, he kept the car together to win by 20 seconds. That's a massive margin in the context of this race. And it's similar to how he dominated the Dutch Grand Prix. And while this was a great result, it does just show you how much he squandered points in Monza and Baku. There was one real imperfection in this race, and that was not getting the fastest lap. He did have it, but then his former teammate Daniel Ricciardo snatched it from him on the final lap of the race, in what very well might be Daniel's final act in Formula 1. There's a lot to unpack in this one lap. Firstly, it is critical to the title fight, because without claiming it, Norris is no longer in control of his destiny. He can win every race, every sprint, and get every fastest lap, but he still won't win if Max comes second in all of those races. While that scenario is unlikely, Daniel's actions have meant that Lando technically can't do it on his own anymore. So this raises a massive moral question. Is it right that racing bulls are getting involved in the title race in a way that supports a driver from another team, but who happen to have the same owners? Is Norris up against 4 drivers while trying to win this title? Racing bulls will say that they wanted to give Ricciardo a nice send-off by letting him get the fastest lap, which, considering his position in the race, was completely meaningless. As a former race winner, this is a pretty small bonus. However, to his stablemate, Max Verstappen, it was exceptionally significant. It's currently not breaking any rules, but it just feels dirty. And you really have to wonder, if it comes down to one point, if that is what Ricciardo would like to be remembered for. It was a very odd race for him. Everyone in the paddock already knew that this was going to be his last race, but yet the team didn't say anything, and they didn't really give him a good chance to say goodbye. His 25 races with Racing Bulls have come to an end. His best result was 7th in last year's Mexican Grand Prix. His goal was to claim his former Red Bull seat, but his performances against a strong teammate in Yuki Tsunoda have not been good enough to displace Sergio Perez. It's always harsh to see a team fire somebody mid-season, but Red Bull do need to do this. They need to give Lawson time to show that he could be considered as a long-term replacement. He now has 6 races to prove what he can do. And removing Ricciardo also removes Perez's main challenger, and maybe that can release the pressure and help him perform to a level we all know he's capable of. We saw glimpses of that in Baku before his crash. Racing Bulls did run a very cool custom livery at this event. It was a Hugo Boss-inspired denim design with fabulous details including zippers, stitches, rips and leather patches. The team unveiled the car on Thursday, and there were some fans still hanging around after the pit lane walk. If you are going to any races this year, do check to see if this is an option available in your package. It's a great chance to see the cars up close, and you often get to see some of the drivers. Mercedes also ran a custom livery celebrating 50 years of Petronas. The silver being replaced by the sponsor's teal, and I think it looked quite good. In the race, George had the best result with 4th place. There were also a lot of custom helmets on display. My favourite was Oscar Piastri's chrome design. Basically, anytime McLaren add chrome to anything, it looks amazing. Singapore is Formula 1's first night race, and it is a very unique event. It's located around Marina Bay with the skyline in the background, and it's one of the most picturesque races of the calendar. It's also one of the hottest. While temperatures don't reach the highs we experienced in Qatar last year, the humidity makes it very uncomfortable. The drivers will lose about 4 kilograms during the race. And this year, the first without a safety car, there was no respite. The drivers do have liquid to drink in the car, but apparently due to the heat, it's undrinkable after 30 minutes. It basically becomes tea. This is one of the reasons they look so exhausted at the end of the race. It's also a grueling one for photographers. I don't know how many kilos I lost. Sadly, I don't think it was as much as the drivers. Braving the heat were Irish pop band The Cause, who presented Lando with the fastest lap tyre. Fresh from winning his 35 Tour de France stage victory, breaking Eddie Merckx's record, and becoming the greatest stage winner of all times, was Mark Cavendish. Here he is with Miles Chamberlain-Watson, the Olympic fencer. I've really enjoyed watching Mark Cavendish at the Tour de France over the years. I was in Châteauroux and witnessed his first stage win back in 2008. Miles was also hanging out with Mutsubashin, the Qatari Olympic high jumper. And I saw Kylie Minogue, who's just released a new single, Lights, Camera, Action. And there was also music icon Lenny Kravitz, who's still looking brilliant at 60. The most interesting guest was Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda. This is not completely left field. As everyone is aware, Formula One does not have a presence in Africa. Despite several failed attempts to host a race in South Africa, nothing has materialized. Rwanda is now putting itself forward to host a race in Kigali, and seeing Paul Kagame at the event is a further sign of the country's interest in the sport. They will host the annual FIA prize-giving ceremony in Kigali on the 13th of December, and if anyone from Rwanda is watching, please let me know what your thoughts are of potentially becoming a Formula One Grand Prix host country. Formula One is so popular at the moment, there's at least 8 or 9 cities proposing races, despite the calendar already being very full. You can see how much it means to the fans in Singapore that their city gets to host a race. The fans are brilliant, and these people have been waiting in the heat for about 6 hours to meet their favourite drivers and get autographs and selfies. Singapore is a wonderful place to watch Formula One. The cars look majestic under lights, sparking down the straights, and as a fan you have a chance to get really close to the cars, like you do on many street circuits. Photographically speaking, there are a lot of unique shots, such as this reflection shot of cars passing by a city bus stop. The roof of the bus stop is made of a reflective material, and it mirrors the cars as they pass through. It's a bit of a famous shot, and at any time you can see 2 or 3 photographers trying to capture it. Taken at normal speeds, it looks rather uninteresting, but it really comes to life when you slow down the shutter speed, and you can blur out all of the clutter. This shot of Charles Leclerc, for example, is taken at 1/5 of a second. Ferrari have missed a golden chance here. Their cars usually go very well. Carlos Sainz won last year, and they've been very good at street tracks this year. They've come off a good run for the past 2 races. Carlos unfortunately crashed in qualifying. The tyres were not hot enough, and he lost control of the car on the warm-up lap. The same cold tyres affected Charles Leclerc's qualifying result, both starting down in 9th and 10th. This will be particularly sad for them, as this was a race that they had marked down as a potential win. So 6th place in the results for Charles wasn't a great return. Over at Red Bull, things might not be as bad as they seem. Despite still not having won in Singapore, Max has done superb damage limitation. He does have a massive lead over Lando, and Lando needs to close that gap by 8 points a race. In the 4 races since the summer break, Max has managed to keep that loss down to just 6.5 points on average. Max scored 54 points in those 4 races versus 80 points for Lando, meaning that Max has saved roughly 6 points from these 4 races. With 6 races to go and 3 sprint races, the gap is 52 points, 53 if you want a 1-point lead. So we go into the final run with everything to play for. Thank you so much for joining me for this look back over the Singapore Grand Prix. I really do hope you've enjoyed it. If you'd like to see some more photographs in the race, please check out the link in the description below. We have a bit of a break now, and then it's off to Austin. So until then, goodbye.